we play a game?
Why, yes. I believe we shall.
Oh, I got a live one here.
Live from Little Rock, it's Shane Plays Radio, Geek Talk Radio, a journey into the things we love. I'm your host, Shane Stacks. Thanks so much for joining us. Whether you're listening on the air at 96.5 FM in the Central Arkansas metro area, Little Rock, or whether you're listening live via the 96.5 FM, theanswer.com stream on their website, or if you're listening delayed via the podcast, or on Krypton Radio, it's a week delayed on Krypton Radio. Krypton Radio is sci-fi for your Wi-Fi, kryptonradio.com. No matter how you're listening, I'm darn glad to have you. Joined in the studio today by Michael Tierney, who is not only a sponsor, but somebody I've known for years and years and years, and I'm just absolutely tickled pink to have him on today. We'll be talking much more with him later, but for right now, say hi, Michael, or hi, Mike. You want to go by Mike or Michael?
I'll usually go by Michael.
Michael. Hi, Michael. So, I get kind of, yeah, I didn't prep you. Yeah, kind of get up on the microphone a little bit. Okay, so hold on, I want to check. Zach, is his level okay? I'm not hearing him. Is his mic on? I don't think your mic's on.
Can you hear me? Anything at all?
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
Now. Okay, you're good now. Zach's good. That's why we have a producer. All right, so Michael, so glad to have you on. We'll talk to you more here in a second. And during the news segment that we're going to have, please feel free to comment or offer opinions or anything. And then later in the show, we're going to be talking, because you are the very definition of a comic industry expert. You've been, you've been on multiple sides of the industry for years and years, and you have your own property, the Wild Stars, that I want to talk about. So,
well, I'm also an Overstreet price guide advisor for the last 25 years.
Yeah, so I mean, you know your stuff when it comes to the comic book industry. So definitely want to talk to you about all that. Just some housekeeping notes that I usually go through. One, you can always find right now at shaneplays.com. You can go there, and there are show notes for today's show right now. So if you have a news item or you want to know more about Michael or the Wild Stars, you can go to the blog at shaneplays.com, and there's links right there that will help with that. Also, the show does go out as a podcast, usually within 2 or 3 days after the live show. And you can find that on my blog at Shane Plays. That's ShanePlays.com. And it's also, you can find it through iTunes and Stitcher and other fine podcast directories. And then, one of the reasons we do this is live radio, live Geek Talk Radio. Hey, nobody else is doing it. Nobody else is doing this. So it's cool and unique. And two, it's so it can be interactive. So if at any point during the show, if you want to call in at 501-823-0965, that's 501-823-0965. Or you can tweet me at Shane Plays. That's ShanePlays. So you can either way, 501-823-0965, or tweet me at Shane Plays, and we welcome your questions and comments during the show. So having said all that, Zach, let's fire up the microphone in the news office and see if those guys and gals are working. Oh, there they go. They're working. It's hard to find good help on Saturdays, Michael.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about it.
Your help is good.
Oh,
You have friendly employees. So, we'll mention this again later, but you have the comic book store on Treasure Hill Road in Little Rock, and then you also have Collector's Edition on JFK Boulevard in North Little Rock.
Right. That's my first store. I've had that one 34 years. Little Rock store I've had 26 years. So that's the newbie store.
Okay, the newbie store. All right. Well, I love your employees. Every time
they do a great job.
Yeah, every time I go in there and have a good experience. So
I'm glad to hear that.
All right. So a little bit of news. People probably expect me to mention, so I'll just mention it, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it because we already know about it. And part of the news segment is I try to bring you stuff you may not be aware of, is that, of course, the Daredevil Season 2 is back on Netflix, or is not back on, it's on Netflix now. So you can binge watch the entire thing. I haven't seen any of it yet, but it's got the Punisher in it, and it's got Elektra. So last season, the main villain was the Kingpin. And I think they brought a little bit of the Hand in, the ninjas, if I remember right.
That's what I've heard. I have not watched it.
Yeah, it's very good. I was really surprised. My wife, the lovely Sheila, got really into it. And that's usually not her kind of thing, but she really liked it a lot. So
the first season was great.
Yeah, really good. So Okay, so mentioned that. I just have to. It's like, well, how could you not mention Daredevil during your news segment?
Yeah, since it just came out, too.
Yeah, just I think yesterday or the day before it hit Netflix.
Yeah,
and of course they're doing this thing now where a lot of their shows, they're putting the entire season up right then. So you can binge watch the heck out of it.
Oh, yeah, that's great. No waiting.
Yeah. So, okay. So here's a story that is interesting, but also a little scary. I've actually been tracking this story for a couple of weeks, and I wanted to see how everything turned out before I brought it up. But Google has a computer through a company called DeepMind called AlphaGo, and it. You can hold on a second, Mike. You've got a mute button here if you want to use it. I should have showed you that before the show.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you've got to clear your throat or something like that, that's one of those radio tricks that people don't know about. It actually has like a little. It's that little no symbol there.
Okay.
So yeah, that's one. So the people listening now know the inside tricks of radio. So there's actually a mute button if you, and I do that all the time. So it's educational. Not only is it geeky, Shane Plays Radio is educational.
Learn how to run a radio show.
Learn how to run a radio show. So anyway, so there's this Go. Are you familiar with the game Go?
No, I'm not. I've heard of it.
It's I think it's a Chinese game from way back in the day, thousands of years ago. But it uses these. It's got a grid game board, and it has black and white little circles, almost like little pebbles.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like chess or checkers. It's much more complex than that,
right?
Because chess and checkers, evidently, you can program a computer to brute force, right? There's a limited set of possibilities that the computer can take in a game of chess,
right?
And it runs through all those and says, "Here's the one I'm gonna take." Boom. So they've been able to do artificial intelligence for chess and checkers for a long time, but Go is much more complex and much more intuitive. And so they just figured, that was the next milestone for artificial intelligence. And they thought it was 10 years out, but actually just recently, like one of the main worldwide Go players just got beat by a computer.
Yeah, I think he won one game. That's
I don't, as far as I saw it up to, it was a 5-game series, best of 3, and the computer already won 3. And I think there were 2 more games left, and I'm not sure if he managed to win one of those or not.
I think he did win.
Won
game,
one.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the thing about this that's scary is this is much more intuitive thinking, right? This is intuitive thinking, which most artificial intelligence is like preset algorithms that it just follows that appears to make it intelligent.
Right.
But this is actually like, everybody was watching these games going, wow, this computer's doing really good, and giving this guy a hard time who's like, one of the best Go players in the world. But it said DeepMind's AlphaGo program has gone further than anyone else by using an advanced system based on deep neural networks and machine learning. So, and it overwhelmed Lee, the human player, in the course of 3 games. So that's kind of scary because it's more like intuition. So, there's the jokes that go around about I for one welcome my robot overlords.
Mm-hmm.
We may be one step closer. And so on a geeky level, it's fascinating, but it's also a little concerning.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Yeah. So
there's a lot of scientists who are concerned about it.
Yeah. Well, Stephen Hawking is a little worried about it. So anyway, all right. So moving on to something a little bit more. Now, Michael, we have a tradition on Shane Plays. And when I talk about Star Trek, I have to use this music, and so I am not legally responsible for any mental anxiety or damage that may result from this. So go ahead and hit us with it, Zach.
Star trekking across the universe. On the Starship Enterprise under Captain Kirk. Star trekking across the universe. Only going forward 'cause we can find reverse.
So there you go. I hope you're okay.
I survived it.
I've built up an immunity to it over the years. So did you ever used to just listen to Dr. Demento? Were you a Dr. Demento guy?
No, I never did catch his show. I've heard all
Okay,
about it,
yeah, that was a staple of his show. So, and I've loved it my whole life.
I was a big fan of Star Trek.
Yeah, well, we got some Star Trek news here. Okay. So the first news item is that have you been keeping up with? There's some really well done fan films that they're continuing the original series. Have you seen any of these?
I haven't seen it, but I have heard about it.
Well, one is called Star Trek Continues, and we've actually had them on the show twice. Well, there's another crew called Star Trek New Voyages, and it used to be Star Trek Phase 2, but now they call it Star Trek New Voyages, and they have a new episode out. I don't know how I missed this. It came out in January, and it's called The Holiest Thing, and it tells the story of how Kirk met Carol Marcus.
Oh, that'd be a good.
Yeah,
story.
so it's actually pretty good. So I've been watching these things for years since they first came out, and they're continually getting better. So definitely recommend it if anybody's a Star Trek fan.
Obviously set in the original universe.
Yeah. What both of these crews are doing is they are taking the original, because the original series ran 3 seasons, right? And so what they're doing is making it so that a 4th season happened. So it's like you're getting, and it looks just like the original series, the sets, the ships, the uniforms, all of it. It looks just like what it did in the original show.
I bet that's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, I definitely recommend it, especially if you're a Star Trek fan. You can enjoy it on 2 levels. One, you can enjoy it on, hey, these feel like Star Trek episodes. Mm-hmm. But 2, you can appreciate, you as a creator can appreciate the amount of effort they're putting into this, right? And they're getting better with each episode, right? Because you can always pick on the quality of the acting or this or that or the other, but they continually get better and better. And there's a lot of heart and a lot of love going into these.
Got the enthusiasm.
Oh,
there.
definitely. Yeah. I would definitely check it. But anyway, this is The Holiest Thing. It's linked on shaneplays.com. So if people want to go, or just search for Star Trek New Voyages, The Holiest Thing, people can find it. Another thing, and Michael, you may be interested in this too. There's a new web comic out that they're publishing it just online. They're not making any money out of it, and it's called Star Trek Beta Fleet.
Oh, I've not heard about that.
It's done really well, and there's a news item on. Just go to shaneplays.com or search for Star Trek Beta Fleet. The author, the publisher, creator is using Tumblr, which is like a microblogging service to publish the comic. So each post is a new panel or a new page of the comic, and it tells the stories of the how did they put it? The misfits. Like what happens? Because in every bureaucracy, every military, there's people who they're not bad enough to outright fire. That it's not worth all the paperwork and all that, but they're not good enough to keep on the front lines. So what do you do with them?
You promote them to their highest level of incompetence.
Yeah, and then, so there's this quote unquote beta fleet, and I think that the reason they're called the beta fleet is because they patrol the beta quadrant, right? Because most of Star Trek happens in the alpha quadrant. Yeah, it's done really well. I'm very impressed with what I've seen. The person's artistic abilities are really good. It looks like Star Trek. They've got the whole Michael Okuda and the Okudagrams and all. I'm talking about that design.
Not really, no.
Well, Star Trek Next Generation, they came up with that computer interface style.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that real. It's got all that, and it's what I'm impressed about it. One, it looks good. It's telling a good story, but it's not being so satirical and such a parody that it's ludicrous. It's like really in the Star Trek universe, right? They're using real science and they're really trying to solve problems, but the captain has to deal with crew members who may or may not be of the best quality. So I definitely recommend it. It's called Star Trek Beta Fleet. So if people are out there hungry for some more Star Trek, and who's not, to be quite honest,
the good Star Trek,
yeah, who's not? So now, what do you mentioned the Prime universe or the Prime timeline? What is your opinion of the J.J. Abrams movie, or J.J. Abrams, not Jesse?
I
Abrams?
liked the second movie better than the first. The first had a lot of flaws.
Yeah, well, they really tinkered around with some of the basic.
Well, the villain, it just didn't work. I mean, he's
Nero.
angry because his planet got blown up. Now he's been thrown back in time. He has
Right.
everything he needs to save his planet. No, I think I'll just go blow up some
Yeah,
other
I'll
stuff
just take
instead.
revenge. Yeah,
it just didn't make any sense.
Interesting. Yeah, well, that's an interesting take.
He could have saved his planet. It was like, no, I'm going to blow somebody else's planet up.
I like them. I will continue to watch them.
Yeah, the second one I thought was good.
Yeah, the second one, and this next one coming out, based on, I wasn't happy on the trailer because it looked like they made it like this straight up action movie, but
How many times is the Enterprise going to get blown up?
yeah, how many times you can blow up the Enterprise? But my thing on it, I like them. They're entertaining movies. I like that we get more motion picture Star Trek. And I like that they came up with an alternate timeline so that the main timeline is still there. They didn't get rid of anything.
I don't know. It seemed to me like they actually wiped out that timeline and replaced it with this timeline.
No, they've said that, they have said that it's the other timeline.
I wish they'd do
there.
a story where they make that clear that this timeline still exists.
Yeah,
I think
supposedly-
everybody would be a lot cooler with it.
Yeah, supposedly our Star Trek that we grew up with is still there, right?
Because the way it seemed like all that we have left of ours is Enterprise, and
Oh, okay.
yeah,
no,
that would not be cool.
No, they haven't. I mean, they have said that, if I'm understanding it correctly, and if anybody wants to pitch in on 501-823-0965 or tweet me at Shane Plays, ShanePlays, maybe you could solve the question. But I thought I had read that there were two separate timelines. But regardless, my main beef with the J.J. Abrams stuff is Starfleet is supposed to be about exploration and, bold new worlds, and, we've overcome a lot of the basic human foibles. And these movies aren't like that. They're more of like, let's go kill stuff. So that's my main beef, But anyway, everyone has their own take on stuff. So, all right, moving on. I know you're familiar with this comic book, Michael, with it, given the industry you're in, the Garth Ennis Preacher.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. Okay. So they're making
very controversial book.
Yeah. It was darn good, but not for the faint of heart.
Definitely not.
I'm not sure if I would read it now. I loved it back in the 90s. I ate it up. I'm not sure if I would read it now.
Yeah, I didn't read the whole series. I read a few episodes here and there just to know what it was about.
Yeah, it was. It's basically, if they follow the comic book, and the news item is there's a TV series. More and more comic book properties are being developed.
AMC is going to do
right.
it.
AMC is going to do it. The news item is that it's going to premiere on May 22nd after the Fear the Walking Dead mid-season finale. So that's the news story. But if they follow the comic book, then basically a very cynical Roman Catholic priest, I guess he wears the garb of like a Catholic priest. I'm not sure what denomination he is, but he's very cynical.
I think he's lost his faith.
He's lost his faith, and he ends up with the voice of God. So whatever he says has to happen.
Yeah, I don't think the Son of Jesus actually plays into the story.
Yeah, and they very go into the stuff that Dan Brown, says, the Holy Blood, Holy Grail, or whatever. These books that have implied there's a bloodline of. But anyway, yeah, very controversial.
They even worked John Wayne into the story, or at least his lighter.
Yeah, his lighter. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. But anyway, and he's got a vampire best friend. So yeah. So anyway, that's coming out.
Kind of multi-genre.
Yeah, it was incredibly well done, very entertaining. But like I said, I'm not sure I would read it now. I have different sensibilities that I did 20 years ago.
Well, AMC took The Walking Dead, which is a lot stronger comic than it is a show, and they cleaned it up enough to make it
to get it on the airwaves,
palatable to the television.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm sure they'll do the same thing with The Preacher.
Okay. Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, because I don't see how they could do some of that, even on like HBO or something. I don't see how they could do some of the stuff that was in Preacher. But
There'll have to be some editing. Yeah.
All right. So here we go. Here we go again, Michael. Here we go again. Okay. So Harrison Ford was in Star Wars: The Force Awakens, right?
Yeah.
Which is like the biggest moneymaker ever.
Oh, yeah.
So now, of course, what's the other big role that Harrison Ford's about to reprise?
Indiana Jones.
Indiana Jones,
yeah.
Is that right?
The whip is back.
Yeah, Steven Spielberg and Harrison Ford announced a new Indiana Jones movie. I love Indiana Jones. I love Harrison Ford, but there comes a point where you're like...
The Rest Home of Doom.
Yeah, the Rest Home of Doom, right? Yeah, it's Indiana Jones and get off my lawn.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know. We'll see. The one they did with the Crystal Skull...
you kind of have the feeling they were setting up Shia LaBeouf to take over.
Yeah,
I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen either. But I did like LaBeouf as his son Mutt. I thought that was fine. But yeah, I mean,
for one episode.
Yeah, for one episode, right? But yeah, the whole passing on the hat, that doesn't sound like it's going to happen.
They even set it up with a shot like that at the very end of the movie.
Yeah, where you thought that he was going to grab the hat, and then Indy picked up the hat.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And most people were not very impressed with the Crystal Skull. So hopefully this one will win more people back over.
I don't think actually wanted to do it because he's like, I've already done E.T. I'm done with the aliens. And Lucas sold him on the deal. Well, they're interdimensional. So they're interdimensional aliens, not space aliens.
Oh, okay. Well, then there you go. Well, Lucas isn't involved with this one.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, because the Indiana Jones rights went to Disney when he sold the Star Wars stuff.
Wow.
So, it's Spielberg and Harrison Ford, but Lucas is not involved. All right. So, all right, moving on in the interest of wrapping this up so that we could talk about the good stuff with you for the rest of the show. I told Zach he would love this news item, and I know that he's going to. Microsoft, and this is big news. Microsoft is going to allow Xbox gamers to play against PS4 and PC players.
That sounds awesome.
Did you know that, Zach?
No, I did not.
Yeah, they're working. They're setting it up so that if you're developing games for Xbox and PC, I guess they're by default or whatever going to be work together, so you can play online. And then they're making it so if PlayStation 4 or anybody else wants to include it in their games, they can. Right? So that's going to make a lot of people happy.
Yes.
That's going to make gamers happy.
Exactly.
That's not going to make the people who make PlayStation up because, they're like, well, my friends only play PlayStation, so I'm going to buy a PlayStation.
That's
right?
why I bought the PS4.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But everybody complains that I can't play games with my friends because they're on Xbox. So that's Microsoft is making it happen.
Great one.
Whether Sony and the other player like Nintendo will jump on the bandwagon is completely up to them. Okay, last news item, and this kind of leads into what we're going to be talking about with Michael Tierney after the break. I just had a podcast extra, which you can find the link on shaneplays.com on the show notes, or if you subscribe to the podcast or go to the YouTube channel, you can find it. I just had Randy Duncan. I interviewed him. He was on the show several weeks back. He writes The Powers of Comics. He's a professor. He teaches comics. But we talked about comics legend Will Eisner and Will Eisner Week that we just had Will Eisner. So we did that. And then there's another one coming next week. We're talking about what makes the medium of comics unique. Why do we engage with it like no other medium out there? All right. I'm going to read a quick ad and then we're going to go to a break. When we come back, we're going to be talking with Michael Tierney, comic book industry expert and creator of the Wild Stars. So, all right. Shane Plays welcomes the River City Comic Expo as a sponsor. You going this year again, Michael?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll be there.
June 11th and 12th at the State House Convention Center in Little Rock, the RCCE is Arkansas's largest comic, toy, game, and cosplay convention and now features the Little Rock Picture Show. Guests include Neil Adams, Mike Zeck. Neil Adams is a big draw. That's pretty big, don't you think? Mike Zeck, James O'Barr, Larry Hama, Michael Golden, and Arkansas's own Mitch and Elizabeth Breitweiser, John Lucas, and Dusty Higgins. And folks, you heard it here, Michael Tierney is going to be there. So you'll find booth after booth with artists and dealers representing comics, toys, books, movies, games, and so much more. Come on out to the River City Comic Expo, June 11th and 12th at the State House Convention Center in Little Rock, rivercitycomicexpo.com.
Hold on to your butts.
June 11th and 12th at the State House Convention Center in Little Rock, the River City Comic Expo is Arkansas's largest comic, toy, game, cosplay convention and now features the Little Rock Picture Show. Guests for 2016 include Neil Adams, Mike Zeck, James O'Barr, Larry Hama, Michael Golden, and Arkansas's own Mitch and Elizabeth Breitweiser, John Lucas, and Dusty Higgins. You'll find booth after booth with artists and dealers representing comics, toys, books, movies, games, and so much more. So come on out to the River City Comic Expo, June 11th and 12th at the State House Convention Center in Little Rock. rivercitycomicexpo.com.
Fairly alarmed here.
Comic book lovers, visit thewildstars.com today. From the mind of author and comic book industry expert Michael Tierney, it's not just a comic book, it's a comic book novel. The Wild Stars is sci-fi and so much more. Learn the explanations behind UFOs and space gods. This isn't the Twilight Zone. This is the region of the Milky Way galaxy known as the Wild Stars. We guarantee you've never read anything like it. The complete comic book novel took 20 years to tell, with one reviewer noting, the story of the Wild Stars stretches ambitiously across space and time, from small-town murders to the destruction of planets, with every event given multiple layers of meaning. If you haven't read The Wild Stars, you're missing out. Visit thewildstars.com today.
Megawars.net. The classic online space strategy game has returned, bigger and better than ever before. Scout the universe and claim your empire. Construct, customize, and launch dozens of different starships. Battle thousands of opponents online in a team-based competition leading to the ultimate battle of the galaxies. Grab your slot today in one of the most hotly anticipated indie games of 2015. Visit megawars.net and get options only available during our pre-sale event running now. Megawars.net.
The die is cast. Plunge into worlds of fantastic adventure where dragons lie and the undead stalk the shades of your mind's imagines. Where creatures of legend plunder wealth through the horror of their passage. Monsters grim and foul hold the ecstasy of gold and the renown of glory. All this and more awaits you and your friends in the unlimited, fantastic world of the Castles and Crusades role-playing game from Trollord Games. Visit your friendly local game store or Trollord.com to get your copy today. A rules-light, adaptable game that has stood the test of time. 12 years in constant publication with no new additions. Castles and Crusades is the original, easy-to-play attribute check system. Join us and unleash your imagination. Visit your friendly local game store or Trollord.com to get your copy of Castles and Crusades today. Shane Plays Radio is blessed to have sponsors, and we appreciate them very much. However, did you know that you can also support the show as an individual for as little as $1 an episode? Simply go to patreon.com/Shane Plays.
Hey, and we're back. Shane Plays Radio, Geek Talk Radio, a journey into the things we love. You can call the show at 501-823-0965, or you can tweet me at Shane Plays, ShanePlays. And I've actually been tweeting back and forth a little bit during the show with Beta Fleet, the guy that does, I'm assuming it's a guy, the person, I'll say, to be politically correct about it, who does the Beta Fleet Star Trek comic book that we had a news item about earlier. So make sure to check out the show notes for that. So I'm joined by Michael Tierney, who I have known since 7th grade.
Way back when.
Yeah, that was 84, 85.
I've been in business since 82.
Yeah. So you were on MacArthur Drive in North Little Rock. I was in 7th grade, and there was this kid in one of my classes who was telling me about this place that all it did was sell comic books.
Everybody thought I was crazy when I opened it up.
I was like, what in the world? Because up to that point, it was spinner racks or Walden Books or whatever.
Yeah, you had to hit every convenience store, every bookstore in town just to try to keep up with the full selection. Because nobody carried everything until I opened up.
Yeah. So I was like, what? And so it was like, I mean, this was like somebody describing like the journey quest of quest. I've got to go. So my mom took me. I had a total meltdown. I loved going to your store. I used to walk from in Levy. My grandparents lived on Sycamore over right off Camp Robinson, and I used to walk all the way from there to your store and back.
Well, we appreciated your business and your dedication there.
Yeah, so I loved going to your store. So anyway, now you have two comic book stores. You have, of course, the collector's edition, which is my stomping grounds. That's where I go, which is on JFK Boulevard in North Little Rock. And then you're over on Treasure Hill Road in Little Rock with the comic book store in the Treasure Hill Shopping Center.
Yeah, I picked that name out before. I thought, well, everybody always got confused. Collector's edition, they come in looking for Bibles, dolls. I thought, okay, the second location, I wanted to have a different name so people wouldn't go to the wrong store. Hey, meet me at Collector's edition. Well, which one?
Right.
So I just named it the comic book store so people know exactly what I was going to do.
And it says exactly what it is. Yeah, this is what it is.
And it turned out to be a great move as far as search engines on the internet when that came around.
Oh, yeah.
That put me right at the top of the list.
Okay. Well,
that's a comic book store in Little Rock, you go straight to me.
Well, I hadn't even occurred to that or thought it, because that wasn't even a glimmer in anybody's eye back then.
That was a 90s thing.
Yeah. Wow. So, real quick, give out your people's hour or give out your hours.
We're Monday through Saturday, 10 o'clock to 6 o'clock and closed on Sunday.
Okay. So those are your hours. And a lot of times I'll swing in like at about 5:30, 5:45, on the way home. So those are good hours. Those are good, if you're trying to get home from work.
Yeah, I experimented a lot. I mean, when I first opened up, I was open 7 days a week. I stayed open till 8 o'clock at night, and you had to figure out what worked and then trim down from there to more manageable.
Well, I commend you for being closed on Sundays, because give people, take one day.
You got to have a day off.
Yeah, take one day. And I grew up like you did when a lot of stuff was closed on Sundays, and the strange thing happened, Michael. Life went on.
Yeah. Well, I did. Last time I experimented with was probably back in the early 90s, and I was open on Sundays between Thanksgiving and Christmas. Stepped back and looked at it after it was all done and figured out I got the exact same kind of income, and I just increased my expenses. So.
Yeah. And stress.
Right. Yeah. So you gotta have a day off.
All right. So you've also, we'll talk a little bit about more of this later, but you publish your own comic, and you have for quite a while, called The Wild Stars.
Right.
You're a comic street, or an Overstreet
Press Guide. Yeah.
For how many years have you been a contributor?
I've been doing that since the 90s.
Okay, and you've also written for numerous publications about comic books. Okay,
I was a regular in Fan Magazine. Overstreet had several different type of magazines going. The Comic Buyer's Guide, the whole time they had a magazine run for several years, and I was in every issue of that.
Yeah.
Writing reviews, market reports,
Right.
articles, all sorts of stuff.
so the point is, you're a comic book industry expert.
Been doing it a long time, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, that's you're an expert.
Well, I'm one of the guys who helped create the grading scale that everybody uses to determine what the condition of a book is.
Really, you helped create.
Oh, yeah.
that?
We all met up. We were using a 100-point scale up until 1999, and we all met up. All of us Overstreet Price Guide advisors met in Timonium, Maryland, and worked it down to a 10-point scale.
Was that like a big battle?
Oh, yeah. You would not believe how much people will argue over 0.1%.
We need to make a movie out of that.
It was a battle. And then the next day, that was all in one day. And the reason we were creating a 10-point scale is this new thing called the Comics Guarantee Corporation, CGC, who grades comics, was just getting ready to start up. And they needed a 10-point scale, which they say they don't use anymore. They have their own scale, which they will not publish their criteria.
Which is not cool.
No, not cool at all, because that just means that they don't want to get caught on being
Right.
accurate or inconsistent.
Right.
And so, but we met with them the next day, and that was quite controversial too.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay, so you know your stuff. You've been a publisher. You're a retailer.
See it
You're-
go through all the changes.
Right. You're on multiple sides of the industry, and have been for most of your career.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a writer. I'm an artist.
Yeah.
I've even printed my own comic books in my garage. So I've done just literally every aspect of it.
Now, you brought me this multiversal scribe.
Yeah, that was actually my first independent
you print
publication.
that?
I didn't actually print that one
Okay.
myself, but that was the first publication. I did all the writing and art on it and published it myself way back in 1977.
Okay. Very
So I've been
cool.
an independent publisher longer than I've been a retailer.
Okay. And tell me, you've shared with me before, like you were one of the first people that were doing like embossed covers.
Yeah, actually, my the volume 2, number 1 of my Wild Stars was the first comic ever with full stamping on the front cover, with die cutting on the front cover, and as far as I know, it's the only comic with die cutting on the back cover, and that was created, written, illustrated, and printed by the same guy. That's the one I did in my garage.
Yeah. I remember buying the Wild Stars back in the 80s, and I was like, I actually know the guy that did this stuff. And those were, treasured parts of my collection. And over the year, like if you go into your comic book stores now, you've got all of them there and they look great. I totally recommend people check them out because they're really good.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah.
It's always funny when people will come in and they'll pick it up off the shelf on their own, and I'll ask them, well, would you like a signature on that? And they'll be like, well, why would you want to write on this? Because they have no idea it's mine.
Yeah. But they look great. So
I'm probably the only stores in the country that can say I've got somebody around to do signings every day of the week.
yeah, every day of the week. So yeah, how funny. So who's the cover artist on the later issues? They look
Frank
spectacular.
Yeah, Frank Bruner. He was a top-notch talent for Marvel back in the 70s. He was a co-creator of Howard the Duck.
Okay.
And he did some fabulous artwork. And so when I was able to hire him to do covers for me, I was really pleased. And he was a great craftsman, too. I mean,
Yeah, they look fantastic.
Oh, yeah. It's like on the Volume 3, Number 2 cover alone, there's a tree on that. He spent an entire day just inking that tree, all
That
those little
tree.
tiny cross hatches.
So he's a not only a professional, but he's a craftsman. He wants to
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, he wants
I'd
to.
send him these little layouts I'd draw up in like 15 minutes. I'd come back with this masterpiece.
That is cool. So really impressed with those covers. And if people go to shaneplays.com, the show notes at the bottom, there's a montage of your covers, but where people really need to go is the Wild Stars. Is it thewildstars.net, right?
No, well, you can find it that way too. It's
Okay.
the THE
Right.
Wild WILDSTARS.com, or I've got about another 12 domain names.
Wow, that point
tagged
to it?
after that.
Okay.
Yeah, they'll all channel you right on over there.
So if you go to thewildstars.com or thewildstars.net,
You just got to be sure to get the in there.
then you'll find information on your stores. You'll find information on like maybe sales and promos you have going on.
Oh, yeah.
Information on the Wild Stars, and you've also got some really interesting articles like the cursed license plate.
Oh,
and
yeah.
some other stuff that you've written. You're a scuba diver, so you've got some scuba diving stuff up there.
Even
yeah.
got some of the shark feeding frenzy video.
Yeah,
with
so
me
there-
right in the middle of it.
Yeah, so people go check out thewildstars.com and you can learn more about the Wild Stars and also the comic, the stores and all that. What I wanted to ask you as an industry expert, what, just in general, what do you feel the state of the comic book industry is right now?
Right now, the comic book industry is as popular as it's ever been. It's mainstream. Used to, it was something people didn't tell people they collected comics.
Right.
I remember in my early days, one time we had a officer from the Air Force. He was in picking up his weekly reserves. All of a sudden, he runs and hides in the corner, ducks down. I'm like, well, this is odd behavior.
Did one of his airmen or something?
Well, it was another officer walked in. Walks up to the counter to get his reserve. Well, the first guy jumps up like a jack in the box, like, aha, you collect comics. These guys were side by side and had no idea. Well, after that, in their office, comics were cool from that point on.
Right, from that point, yeah.
But, used to people were ashamed to say, oh, I collect comic books. Because it was supposed to be for kids, which it was not. I mean, it was aimed at all ages, and that means anybody of any age, not just for kids. And now comics are so acceptable, so mainstream, they're doing as well as they could. You still have to get Marvel and DC to realize how to tell good stories. And, sometimes they make a few mistakes because they don't listen to us retailers as well as they should. I've had publishers and creators tell me, well, we don't want to hear what the customers want, what you're saying. It's your job to sell what we want to make. And I'm telling them, no, it doesn't work that way. That's the tail wagging the dog. You got to make what the customer wants. And that's what I was trying to tell them. Right.
Well, there's, you are right that there is there's been a change in the perception of the coolness or whatever comics.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a parallel thing going on with like role-playing games and games in general. Like, everybody, like I work with some younger folks that, a couple of guys and a girl, and they're like, oh yeah, we want to play D&D and that would never, they're just out of college, and that would never have been in the 80s, right? Or 90s or parts of the 90s. But you had stuff like Kevin Smith's movies, and you have stuff like The Big Bang Theory, and just all this stuff have helped make these things. And the movies, the success of all the comic book related entertainment is helping.
Well, technology had to come around to where they could make the movies right.
Right.
Used to, if you want to show Mr. Fantastic, you'd show a glove on a broom.
Right.
And
Yeah.
sort of to the screen. Or here comes a book on a string. Hey, it's Invisible Girl walking by reading a book. I mean, they just didn't have the technology to make it look right. Now they do. And, the fun stories and the fantastic adventures are very popular.
Right. Yeah. So I'm glad to hear that because, I'm a comic book lover. And it's, people are always talking about the doom of the comic book industry. So I'm glad to hear that things are going well. Now, are they going well financially?
Well, last year was a rough year because Marvel and DC basically stopped making all their main things and started doing filler issues for most of the year, which put a lot of retailers in the position of their first year in business where you had to guess on everything. And a lot of books didn't sell because the fans were like, no, I want the regular titles. I don't want to read filler.
Do you feel comfortable sharing an example of that? I mean, I don't want to put you on the spot if you don't feel
there were just so many of them. I can't really narrow it
down.
Well,
are you talking about like all like the Secret Wars and the Convergence stuff?
Well, Convergence did not work.
Convergence was a disaster.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll tell you what, because I was trying to blog about it, and as a comic book guy, I bought every single issue of that whole thing. Not only the limited series, but all the 2-part.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, oh, they're bringing back all these other versions of the characters that I love. It was terrible.
That's what everybody said.
There were a few issues here and there that were good, but the overall, terrible.
Yeah.
Now, the Secret Wars that they just did for Marvel was much better, but still wasn't necessary.
Well, the problem with that one is the core story was fine.
Yeah.
The crossovers did nothing. People will not buy 100 books just to read a 9-part story.
Right.
You can't get them to buy another 80 books on top of that. And it was just insane. And a lot of things that they tried to bring back all their previous major events that they used to do, like a previous Civil War.
They're doing Civil War 2 now.
Yeah, now they're doing another Civil War. I hope it sells a lot better than the one they did last year because nobody bought it.
Yeah.
And but you don't know as a retailer, you've got to guess, and you get these first issues in, and all of a sudden nobody's buying it. Well, you don't get to return the books on what we do for a living. We buy on a non-returnable basis. So you buy 100 copies, think you're going to sell it, and you sell 5 copies. All of a sudden
you're stuck with it.
95 books that you just can't. They're yours forever. I mean, you put a little mustard and salt on them. They, a little fiber, but that's just not good to eat.
Wow. Okay. So, what is selling right now?
Well, X-Men are very popular, but Marvel's kind of trying to go away from them because they
of
don't have the movie rights.
Yeah, they're really pushing the Inhumans now.
Exactly.
Which as a child, I really bit my teeth on comics in the 80s. So to see the mutants minimized in favor of the Inhumans hurts me personally, but whatever.
Yeah, in the 80s, Marvel had an editor by the name of Jim Shooter.
Yeah.
he really got Marvel going. I mean, at that time, he was like 2/3 of the industry. Marvel was, and but the creators didn't like him because he made sure they turned their work in on time. Every book shipped on time. If they had to put a filler issue in there, they would. They had to get somebody else to come in and finish the work for them. But everything shipped on time.
Yeah, it was unheard of back then for like, it's delayed for 3 weeks. That just didn't happen.
Yeah, it's like the Secret Wars that you were just talking about. The last issue was delayed by 6 months. I mean, and the problem with that one was they had all these spin-off titles that were coming out of it. Well, they started coming out months before the final issue came out. Everybody's like, well, how did this happen? How did this character get this way? Well, they're going to tell you in a couple of few months when that story finally comes out.
Well, yeah, because Spider-Man popped up with a black costume and nobody knew why.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. And so it just creates all this confusion, and you just don't want to confuse your customers. You need to run it like a professional business, and sometimes they don't.
So how is this stuff? Like, I see a lot more on the shelves of the, like IDW does a lot of like, Ghostbusters, Transformers, G.I. Joe. Mm-hmm. How is that stuff selling?
Oh, it's doing fine because they're, a long time ago, Marvel had this rule of no more, licensing. But now they've gotten away from that because Disney's bought them, and obviously Disney has a very popular license in Star Wars, and those have done well. That was actually what saved Marvel last year. Those things sold huge.
Yeah, those things sold great,
and they did a good job with them too.
Yeah, they're good. They're not. They're doing good stuff with. In fact, I read several Star Wars and Darth Vader last night.
Right,
they're good. Yeah.
Well, see, the nice thing about IDW and other publishers like Boom, they give you the material that the big publishers don't want to do, more creator friendly, and they're not superheroes. They're all the other type of stories that you can.
Well, they're doing Back to the Future. They're doing Transformers. They're doing like I said, G.I. Joe, Ghostbusters, Godzilla. They're doing all this.
Very popular.
They're doing X-Files. They're doing all this crazy stuff, and it's good. Everything I picked up from IDW, I like. And I see them. Is the IDW, who is it that's doing all the Archie stuff right now? Because
Archie's still doing their own stuff.
Is it? Because they've done some crazy stuff like Archie Meets Aliens.
Yeah, Archie's actually stopped making the books that they were known for, kid-friendly type of stuff. Right. Now they're trying to push the edge. Archie's a little bit more
stuff.
Yeah, then you've also got Afterlife with Archie, where Archie's in the world of zombies, and that's just for older readers only. They've done the same thing with Sabrina, made her a more mature.
Right.
So they've actually gone away from
selling.
Yeah, they actually sell very well for Archies, but they sell better than the actual Archies used to. But there's just not that much for kids anymore, and those are being made by other publishers like Boom. Interesting thing about Boom publishers is they're the ones doing the Disney comics. Donald Duck, Uncle Scrooge, Walt Disney. You'd think Marvel would be doing those.
Yeah, you'd think.
Yeah, find out Donald Duck's actually Howard the Duck's long-lost brother.
Yeah, or something like that. Yeah,
Donald's got Huey, Dewey, and Louie. Well, those must be Howard's kids. I don't know.
How funny. All right, so... What and there's something I asked you a year or two ago when I was in the store, and I was surprised to hear this. I assumed with all the trade paperbacks that back issue sales would have plummeted, but you said that the back issue sales are still pretty healthy.
Yeah, actually, back issue sales do very well for us, but I put a lot of emphasis on that. Now, nationwide, there's been a big push to just do new comics only and slash and burn, not carry back issues at all. I hear a lot of retailers say, well, that's a lot of work. Well, gee, when you do a job, you do some work. And my customers love it. And people who travel around the country, I have people who make pilgrimages every year to my stores because they've got a big selection
back
of
issues.
Yeah, people like to actually go through and pick. You don't want to buy online. You're buying something blind. You have to get it shipped to you. You don't know what you got to actually open up the package.
Right.
This way they can come in and look around and they'll find stuff they didn't really
both of your
realize they wanted.
stores, a huge amount of the real estate is dedicated to back issues.
Wait, we've got hundreds of thousands to choose from.
Yeah.
And that's one of our emphasis, and I think that's one of the things that makes it so popular. Why I've been around 34 years is because of the selection that you can't find almost anywhere else.
Well, that still surprises me that with trade paperbacks that the back issues hasn't slacked off a little bit, but I'm glad to hear it's not. I mean, that's fine.
It was so crazy how hard it was to get them to start doing trade paperbacks.
Well, you have tell your story on that.
Oh yeah, I see. When I first opened up in '82, the first thing you want to do is you want to find a niche that nobody else is serving. One was to carry the comics, but then I also wanted to do something special besides just carrying the comics. And I was taking the runs of deluxe reprints of popular stories and having them bound by a local bindery into hardcovers. And those things sold as fast as I could get them made. Well, there was a convention up in Madison, Wisconsin, where for retailers to meet the publishers, Marvel and DC. So I took a batch up there with me, and I showed them, and I said, "Okay, I got two questions for you. One, any problems? I mean, I don't want you guys to sue me for making these things." And they were like, "Well, wow, you put them in a plastic bag, you repackaged them. However you want to resell something in your store, that's your own business."
I bought. You published a leather bound edition of Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Right, that's a
and
beautiful book.
I bought that. That was one of that was a big part of my collection.
Yeah, I did about a dozen different titles that way. Yeah. And so they were like,
They didn't care?
Yeah, they said they have no problem. They said, okay, the second question I have then is,
Why aren't you doing it?
Exactly, yeah. And they were like, there'll never be a market for reprint
man.
collection. They told me, there's no demand. It'll never be there. Then they tried it with Watchmen. They tried it with Batman: The Dark Knight Returns, both of which are still in print today.
Gangbusters.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're gonna have to take a break real quick. When we come back, talk a little bit more about the industry, talk about the wild stars a little bit. One of my favorite things to say on the show, Michael, is time is a predator that stalks us all our lives. It always goes so quickly, but we'll try to talk about as much as we can. On the back end, when we come back from the break, I want to ask you, and I don't want to know now, but I want to know after the break, how is digital affecting you as a retailer? I'd like to ask you that. So, but first, we're going to give some love to one of our sponsors. Some Goblins Are Your Friends. Game Goblins is Central Arkansas's premier retailer of Magic the Gathering, Warhammer 40K, board games, card games, RPGs, miniatures, and hobby accessories. Call Game Goblins at 501-224-GAME or visit them online at gamegoblins.com. Conveniently located at 1121 South Bowman, right on the corner of Bowman and Canis in West Little Rock, and staffed by friendly employees, Game Goblins has expanded their store size, and there's plenty of room for exciting inventory and tables for play space. For all your gaming needs, I heartily recommend Game Goblins. First-time customers, mention Shane Plays and receive $10 off your purchase of $50 or more. Call Game Goblins at 501-224-GAME or visit them online at gamegoblins.com. Tell them Shane Plays sent you.
Hold on to your butts.
June 11th to 12th at the State House Convention Center in Little Rock, the River City Comic Expo is Arkansas's largest comic, toy, game, cosplay convention and now features the Little Rock Picture Show. Guests for 2016 include Neil Adams, Mike Zeck, James Aubert, Larry Hama, Michael Golden, and Arkansas's own Mitch and Elizabeth Brettweiser, John Lucas, and Dusty Higgins. You'll find booth after booth with artists and dealers representing comics, toys, books, movies, games, and so much more. So come on out to the River City Comic Expo, June 11th and 12th at the State House Convention Center in Little Rock. RiverCityComicExpo.com.
Fairly alarmed here.
Comic book lovers, visit thewildstars.com today. From the mind of author and comic book industry expert Michael Tierney, it's not just a comic book, it's a comic book novel. The Wild Stars is sci-fi and so much more. Learn the explanations behind UFOs and space gods. This isn't the Twilight Zone. This is the region of the Milky Way galaxy known as the Wild Stars. We guarantee you've never read anything like it. The complete comic book novel took 20 years to tell, with one reviewer noting, the story of the Wild Stars stretches ambitiously across space and time, from small-town murders to the destruction of planets, with every event given multiple layers of meaning. If you haven't read The Wild Stars, you're missing out. Visit thewildstars.com today.
Megawars.net. The classic online space strategy game has returned, bigger and better than ever before. Scout the universe and claim your empire. Construct, customize, and launch dozens of different starships. Battle thousands of opponents online in a team-based competition leading to the ultimate battle of the galaxies. Grab your slot today in one of the most hotly anticipated indie games of 2015. Visit megawars.net and get options only available during our pre-sale event running now. Megawars.net.
The die is cast. Plunge into worlds of fantastic adventure where dragons lie and the undead stalk the shades of your mind's imagines. Where creatures of legend plunder wealth through the horror of their passage. Monsters grim and foul hold the ecstasy of gold and the renown of glory. All this and more awaits you and your friends in the unlimited, fantastic world of the Castles and Crusades role-playing game from Trollord Games. Visit your friendly local game store or Trollord.com to get your copy today. A rules-light, adaptable game that has stood the test of time. 12 years in constant publication with no new additions. Castles and Crusades is the original, easy-to-play attribute check system. Join us and unleash your imagination. Visit your friendly local game store or Trollord.com to get your copy of Castles and Crusades today. Shane Plays Radio is blessed to have sponsors, and we appreciate them very much. However, did you know that you can also support the show as an individual for as little as $1 an episode? Simply go to patreon.com/ShanePlays.
Hey, we're back on Shane Plays Radio, Geek Talk Radio, a journey into things we love. I'm joined by Michael Tierney, comic book industry expert and the creator and publisher of the Wild Stars, one of the longest. I mean, how long has the Wild Stars been going? 20-something years?
I've been publishing since '84.
All right, people go to thewildstars.com or thewildstars.net. It's not just a science fiction. I don't even know how to describe it.
Well, it's definitely multi-genre.
Yeah, it's multi-genre. It's very cool.
One of my artists described it as Dallas meets Star Wars.
There you go. So go check it out. It's thewildstars.com. We'll get you there. And that'll also, Michael has his comic book stores on JFK, the comic book or collector's edition on JFK in North Little Rock, and the comic book store on Treasure Hill Road in Little Rock. Now, before the break, I told you I wanted to ask you, what is digital doing to the industry right now, from your perspective as a retailer?
Well, everybody always thought that once they started making digital comics, that every comic book store in America would fold like a chain of tower record stores when music went digital, and the opposite happened. Sales went up. For years, we were always pushing Marvel.
Sales went up?
Yeah, sales went up because we were always pushing Marvel and DC. You got to advertise these things. They always thought it was our job to do all the advertising for them. Well, all of a sudden, when they wanted to do digital, they came up with some money to do some advertising. So that helped. People used to think that they didn't make comics anymore. There was just nothing out there telling people that they were around.
Well, that's one I don't know if it's a problem if comics are still being bought and it's very popular right now. But used to, you'd walk into a convenience store, or you'd walk into a grocery store, or you'd walk into a bookstore, and there'd be a spinner rack of comics.
But then in the 90s, they got very mature. They just took all the codes off them, so they weren't telling people, hey, these are not necessarily for kids anymore.
Right.
Parents complained. They got pulled. You will not find a comic in a Walmart in the South because one of the Walmart areas has apparently bought a comic that was too mature for a grandchild, and bam,
and went,
they
whoa,
were gone. Yeah.
Well, we've known for years that comics aren't just for kids.
Right.
But the American conscience still hasn't quite gotten that message.
Right. Well, they're still used to decades of advertising, hey, kids comics. And they started making comics that weren't just aimed at kids, but the word did not get out there.
Right.
And so they were doing no advertising at all. And so when they started advertising the digital, that got people where the comics were still around. And when they maybe tried the digital, I don't know about you, but as the computer becomes more of your day-to-day work, what you do for a living, it's not what you want to do for fun so much anymore.
Right.
And comics, I don't think read as well. It is a tactile experience.
I much prefer the tactile. Scott McCloud, when he did Reinventing Comics, he made the case that there's some stuff you can do digitally you can't do on paper, and that's true.
That's true, yeah.
But the traditional 22-page stapled in the middle comic, that's what I want. And digital is my fallback if I have no other choice.
Yeah.
And here's another, I talked about this with Randy Duncan in that podcast that I mentioned during the news. Computer screens are transmissive. They transmit to your eye. Mm. Paper is reflective. And it's easier on your eyes. So it's just not even as easy on you physically to read them digitally.
Right. And then also, too, digital will never have any collector's value in the future.
Right.
And who knows how long that operating platform will still be good.
Right.
You've got a comic book printed, as long as you've got light coming from somewhere, as long as the sun's still shining or you get a flashlight, you'll still be able to read that comic 1,000 years from now.
Yeah, and I think it's more than just nostalgia that in my opinion, makes the printed version superior.
Yeah.
It's more than just nostalgia. It is a
you can't beat
experience.
that 2-page spread.
Yeah, I love it. Okay, well, we're about to have to wrap up, believe it or not. Is there anything you want to share, take about 30 seconds, what you would like to see happen in the industry right now? Or
well, I'd like to see more self-contained stories.
I'd love that. Yeah. Tired of the because they want to do trade paperbacks.
And this one event after another. The comic book world was too static. Nothing ever changed. You knew by the end of the story you'd be right back to square zero. Now there's no stability. It's like no firm ground at all. Everything changes and it goes from one major event to another, and there is no status quo anymore. And I'd like to see a little bit of that back. I mean, you don't want to become stagnant, but at the same time, you need some kind of foundation.
I hear you. I want to have you back on in the future. And in this story, you're working on some very cool Edgar Rice Burroughs stuff now.
Yeah, I'm working on a 3-book arc chronology of the pulps, the books and hardcovers and paperbacks, and also the comic books. And it's a 3-book thing with like 4,000 images.
When that gets ready to publish, we're going to have you back on
Right.
if you'll come back on.
I'd love it. Yeah.
So,
Thanks
all
for
right.
having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're one of the coolest dudes I know. I've always loved going into your stores. You represent comic book stores to me because you were the first owner I ever met. I was like, this is the coolest dude on the face of the earth. He has a comic book store. So, but anyway, to wrap us up, folks, next week we're going to have Beamdog Incorporated talking about their upcoming Baldur's Gate Interquel, which is Baldur's Gate Siege of Dragonspear. I've invited Chris Avalone to swing by. I don't know if he will or not, but definitely looking forward to talking to Beamdog. And the tweet of the week this week is from Dungeon Facts. And he said, one of my favorite adjectives is jumentous, and it means of or pertaining to the smell of horse urine. What in the heck, Michael? Jumentous. So anyway, that's so weird? Yeah, Michael's looking at me like, what the heck? So, all right. Well, I got to wrap it up, folks. Thanks so much for listening. Remember, you can catch us on Krypton Radio, a week delayed, and on the podcast. Shane Stacks, I am out.